hard moments are, they have to be hard. If they weren't hard, it wouldn't be any good.
For 17 years, Anjelica Huston lived in the shadow of one of Hollywood's most turbulent love stories. She was young, talented, and deeply in love with Jack Nicholson, a man who would become one of cinema's greatest legends, but also one of her life's most painful chapters. Now at 74, Huston is finally breaking her silence, revealing the truth about what really happened behind closed doors during their decades-long relationship. From broken promises to heartbreaking betrayals, this is the story she kept hidden for years. What she's saying now will change everything you thought you knew about their romance. And it all started with one fateful meeting that would alter her life forever. Anjelica stepped away from one heartbreak only to stumble headfirst into another, though she couldn't have known that yet. Anjelica Huston, daughter of the legendary filmmaker John Huston, had grown up orbiting Hollywood's most dazzling circles. So when an invitation to Jack Nicholson's birthday party landed in her world, it felt less like a coincidence and more like fate pulling strings behind the curtain. That night, something electric passed between them. What began as a glittering party encounter stretched into the early morning hours, the kind of night that rewrites a person's story before they've even had a chance to sleep on it. When Nicholson came calling afterward, asking her out properly, Huston must have felt like the universe was confirming what the night had already whispered to her. Then came the cancellation, not for something urgent or unavoidable, but reportedly to rekindle time with a former flame, singer Michelle Phillips. It was the kind of move that, in hindsight, said everything about the man she was falling for. He was charming, magnetic, utterly irresistible, and completely unwilling to be tamed. The fear he inspired wasn't just the stuff of movie screens. Even years later, Gwyneth Paltrow confessed that Nicholson unsettled her in a way she couldn't quite explain. Huston, hearing this, didn't rush to defend him. Instead, she quietly agreed, because she knew something Paltrow was only beginning to sense, that behind the brilliant performances and the wolfish grin lived a man who played by rules he wrote himself. And yet, Huston stayed. For 17 years, she remained in his orbit, loving someone who gave just enough to keep her hopeful and too little to make her whole. It's the kind of relationship that leaves a particular mark, not the sharp sting of sudden betrayal, but the slow ache of a woman who deserved more, watching time slip past like sand she couldn't hold. In her memoir, Watch Me, Huston recalled a moment that captured the painful contradiction of loving Jack Nicholson perfectly. There they were, together at a restaurant, when his eyes, and his charm, drifted toward their waitress without a flicker of discretion. Humiliated, Huston rose to leave. In an instant, his hand caught her arm, his voice firm with a possessiveness he rarely directed her way. And here lies the tragedy. She admitted that she savored it. That brief, selfish grip on her arm felt closer to devotion than anything else he regularly offered her. This was the cruel rhythm of their relationship. Whenever his wandering ways cut too deep, he would return with something shiny to smooth things over. A stunning Mercedes appeared as one such peace offering, which she crashed that very same day, as though even the gift itself couldn't quite hold together under the weight of what it was meant to fix. No car, no gesture, no luxury could patch the hollow ache of feeling perpetually second in someone else's story. The indignities accumulated quietly over the years. At a concert they attended together, another woman spent the entire evening draped across him, and when Huston's hurt surfaced, he dismissed her feelings with a casual eye roll, framing it as her problem rather than his behavior. She believed him. At least about the old friends. It was the new ones, as she would come to understand far too late, who carried the real danger. Looking back, the joyful memories struggled to outweigh the painful ones. She had traded her peace for fleeting moments of his attention and called it love for 17 long years. The cracks had shown themselves early. Not long into their relationship, a close friend of Huston's, a model, quietly confessed that she had been intimate with Nicholson just a week before. There had been no promises of exclusivity, no formal declaration of devotion, and yet the revelation landed like a quiet devastation. Perhaps that was the moment Huston truly understood the man she had fallen for. Jack Nicholson didn't belong to anyone. He belonged to the world, and the world was more than happy to receive him. Because at the very same time their relationship was finding its footing, Nicholson's career was ascending to heights few actors ever reach. From his electrifying performance in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to the terrifying genius he brought to The Shining, and later the iconic menace of Batman, each role cemented his status as one of Hollywood's most untouchable names. He wasn't just a great actor, he was a phenomenon. And with that kind of gravity, people were inevitably pulled into his orbit, whether Huston liked it or not. She often didn't. At the celebrated Cannes Film Festival, she watched as beautiful strangers gravitated toward him with a boldness that left little to the imagination, inviting him away with playful ease. And Nicholson, seemingly unbothered by the woman standing beside him, would accept without hesitation. Huston later recalled the particular heartbreak of being left standing alone on a sun-drenched pavement while he disappeared with someone else, only for her to make the quiet, tearful walk back to their hotel room alone. Night after night, city after city, the same cruel pattern repeated itself, and yet she stayed. Why? Because love rarely obeys logic. Huston was deeply, painfully, completely in love with him, and beneath every humiliation, every tear shed behind closed hotel doors, burned a persistent dream that one day Jack Nicholson would look at her and choose her, fully and finally, that she would become his wife, that all the waiting and all the hurting would be redeemed by a future he had never actually offered her. She even dared to say it out loud once, with a bold vulnerability that only someone truly desperate for an answer would risk. During a quiet evening together, she looked at him and said words to the effect of, if he had any courage at all, he would marry her. What came back was not the hesitation of a man weighing his feelings. It was a flat, almost incredulous rejection. The response hit like a door slamming shut on everything she had quietly hoped for, and Huston wept for 3 days in its wake. 3 days of grieving a future that had only ever lived inside her own heart, and still, she found ways to stay. When love notes surfaced, tender, incriminating messages from other women, filled with gratitude for nights spent in his company, Huston looked at the evidence and chose not to see it. She later described herself as tragically gullible in those moments, a phrase that carries the particular sadness of someone reflecting on their own blind spots from a safe distance. She wanted so desperately to believe in the version of him she loved that she allowed his denials to overwrite what was right in front of her eyes. It is one of the most human things a person can do, to love someone so completely that the truth becomes unbearable to hold. But truth has a way of accumulating. Slowly, quietly, it gathers weight until even the most devoted heart can no longer carry it. After 17 years, Anjelica Huston finally shed the weight. The decision to walk away wasn't born from a single dramatic moment, but from the exhaustion of years spent hoping a man would become someone he had never pretended to be. She left not in anger, but in the quiet, hard-won clarity of a woman who had finally chosen herself. It was long overdue, and it was brave. Because leaving someone you still love, even when they have given you every reason to go, remains one of the most difficult things a heart can be asked to do. After a painful split from Jack Nicholson, she tried to move on. She entered a new relationship, hoping for peace, stability, something solid. But within months, that hope shattered. The new man in her life became physically violent. Nicholson may have wounded her heart many times, but he had never laid a hand on her. And so, bruised in more ways than one, Huston found herself drifting back to the man she truly loved, convincing herself that maybe this time would be different. It wasn't. Back at Nicholson's house, the signs were impossible to ignore. Feminine belongings that weren't hers appeared in drawers and on bathroom counters. Once, she even ran into a young woman on the street wearing her jacket. Huston later admitted she would sometimes wear the mysterious jewelry she found, half expecting someone to walk up and claim it. No one ever did. The silence hurt more than a confession would have. Yet while her personal life was unraveling, her career was soaring. In 1986, she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for her unforgettable role in Prezi's Honor. It was a triumphant moment, proof of her talent, her strength, her individuality outside of Nicholson's shadow. Years later, audiences would also adore her as Morticia in The Addams Family, a role that became iconic in its own right. With both their careers flourishing and so many years invested in each other, Huston began to believe that perhaps Nicholson was finally ready to settle down. Maybe time had changed him. Then came the dinner invitation. Nicholson asked her over for what felt like a special evening. Huston waited, heart pounding. Was this it? After all the heartbreak, all the waiting, would he finally propose? He did have big news, but it wasn't a ring. "Someone is going to have a baby," he told her. For one surreal moment, Huston wondered how that could be. She certainly wasn't pregnant. Then came the truth. The someone was model Rebecca Broussard, 12 years younger than Huston. In that instant, years of hope collapsed. The man she had loved on and off for nearly 2 decades was starting a family with someone else. It wasn't just betrayal, it was finality. Beyond the shock of the pregnancy news, Anjelica Huston was left wrestling with something even deeper than heartbreak. It wasn't just betrayal, it was doubt. The quiet, cruel questions crept in. Was she not beautiful enough, not worthy enough, not young enough? When the weight of it became unbearable, she went looking for Jack Nicholson. Finding him in his office, years of swallowed pain finally erupted. The lies, the other women, the humiliation of seeing strangers wear pieces of her life, it all came pouring out. She struck him again and again, releasing the fury she had carried for nearly 2 decades. Nicholson didn't fight back. Perhaps he understood he had earned every blow. Huston would later admit there was something strangely cathartic about that moment, almost a grim sense of closure in being allowed to unleash the storm she had kept inside. Though time softened the memory enough for them to eventually laugh about it, the split left a permanent fracture. Nicholson went on to build a family with Rebecca Broussard, welcoming another child into his life. Huston, however, finally found the stability she had longed for, a man who chose her completely. She married and built a quieter, steadier love that lasted 16 years. When her husband passed away, she faced solitude once more, but this time she did not look back. She had loved deeply, lost painfully, and learned fully, and for the first time, she chose herself. Outside of relationship drama, when people speak of Hollywood royalty, Anjelica Huston stands in a league of her own. Born into cinema through her father, legendary director John Huston, she could have easily been remembered as simply part of a famous family. Instead, she built a legacy that was fierce, elegant, and entirely her own. Her true breakthrough arrived with Prizzi's Honor, directed by her father. Playing the icy yet vulnerable Maros Prizzi, Huston delivered a performance layered with wit, bitterness, and heartbreak. The role earned her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, making history as part of a rare 3-generation Oscar family. It wasn't just a win, it was a declaration that she was more than a surname. She followed it with bold, unforgettable roles. In The Witches, she transformed into the terrifying yet darkly glamorous Grand High Witch, proving she could command fantasy with theatrical brilliance. Then came her most iconic mainstream role, the hauntingly beautiful Morticia Addams in The Addams Family and its sequel, Addams Family Values. With her statuesque presence, dry humor, and velvet voice, Huston redefined Gothic elegance for a new generation. Morticia wasn't just a character, she became a cultural symbol, but her career was never limited to dark glamour. In The Grifters, she delivered a sharp, emotionally complex performance that earned her another Oscar nomination. Later, films like Ever After showcased her commanding screen presence in historical drama, while The Royal Tenenbaums introduced her to modern indie audiences with quiet sophistication. Across decades, Huston proved she could be wicked, wounded, regal, or ruthless, sometimes all at once. Her legacy isn't just about awards or famous roles. It's about endurance, about carving strength out of heartbreak, about turning aristocratic poise into artistic power. Anjelica Huston didn't simply inherit Hollywood, she mastered it.